Afternoon, good morning, and good evening, friends, wherever you are in the world. We're really very happy to be gathered here again in our March Chartres community call. And just the faculty's been talking, and we're hearing about a variety of weather conditions all the way from 23 degrees to 80 degrees. And we hope that wherever you are, you're safe in your homes. And we're going to begin our call today with a Pila offering us an opening invocation.
Good morning. As I light this sacred fire, igniting the cedar from Chartres, and the fragrance swirls and twirls and rises to the heavens, inviting our thoughts to come together in the same way. In the crackle of the fire, the dance of the flames, the secrets of arithmetica, of the sacred mysteries of life, in one simple, elegant ceremony. We assemble around the fire this morning, around the deep fragrance of the natural world, the forests of the north, with snow and purity and cold receding now as the sun makes its way northwards and the earth tips and moves again in its round about the sun. Let it be this way for our community. Let us also move ourselves, lean ourselves towards the light. May we hear the frequencies of the light and so experience the full radiance of the spectrum in sequence, in cadence, with that long ago established pattern of renewal. We give thanks for this gift, this ability of life to renew, life after life after life. And in the moment where the earth cries, let this community of people leaning towards the light open our hearts, our minds, that we might hear those cries and move in alignment, in accordance with those inspirations to heal, to revive, to renew, that our life, our planet may be verdant. Ah, Mama, Uano, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pila, for your beautiful words and great inspiration for us today. Thank you. So today on our call, Andrew is going to be our featured speaker. I think probably everyone knows that. We're very much looking forward to you talking about Bach. Andrew, at least I am, being a music lover. And this week, I actually heard a lecture on the art of the fugue and its relationship to sacred number and Pythagorean theory, and the Pythagorean brotherhood and their influence on his work. So I'm very excited about what you're going to be bringing today. And so also, I just want to mention, in case I don't get a chance to mention it at the end of the call, Peggy's going to be our featured speaker next month, which we're very much looking forward to, and wanting to hear your grace and your wisdom and your thoughts about life and about sacred numbers and what we're going to be doing in Chartres, dancing with you. So Jim is in London right now, having a meeting with the core team of Ubiquity University and Wisdom University, and
hooray, hooray.
He told us he's better than anyone could imagine, or something like that. We'd love to hear from you and hear what it is that you have to share about how you're doing in London and what it has to do with sacred numbers.
It's our experience of sacred numbers right now is with the investors that are coming in at very substantial levels of numbers.
Ah,
And so I am feeling in a very much of a state of abundance at the moment. What Karen indicated is true. We've been, excuse me. Excuse me. We've been here in London since Sunday night. We finish up tomorrow. We've had about a dozen of our key staff meeting. We've all been staying in a neighborhood of Airbnbs and meeting actually in my living room, in my little Airbnb in Holland Park here by Paddington Station, for those of you who know London. Then starting tomorrow night, a subset of us will be meeting with our major investor through the weekend, and then going to Brussels for a meeting with more investors. And then people will be flying to various places home next Wednesday. And then next weekend, I actually fly to Vietnam and various points of Asia, building our strategic partnerships in Vietnam and Australia and Thailand and Nepal and Sri Lanka, various other places, and then coming back to Europe. But I think it's just worth noting as we approach the spring equinox in the beginning of the new year that Ubiquity University and the Wisdom School are now in very deep discussion around how we now scale globally what is essentially a infrastructure for the distribution of transformational learning. And to be doing that now with strategic financial partners that understand that there is immense profitability in this space, and are also committed to a transformational learning design is intensely gratifying, because what we've been building, as all of you know, for the last, well, since I came in as president of the institution back in 2005, due to the good and gracious offices of Apila and my good friend Andrew, who helped midwife it all. We've been building a global learning community. And we transitioned from a nonprofit institution to a for-profit institution back in 2012, so that we could attract the level of investment necessary for us to do something that is critically imperative in the world right now. We all know, given Trump in the United States and Le Pen in France and what's just happening in the Netherlands and all over, the world is in a complete mess, politically, economically, culturally, socially, in terms of climate. And the single greatest challenge that we human beings have is, how do we change consciousness at a mass level in a short period of time, so that we can both understand the current challenges, but solve them from a new level of consciousness. The world is in a crisis because we're all caught in Einstein's axiom that the consciousness that produces the problem can't solve the problem. That's why our governments can't solve the problem, because that's the consciousness that produced the problem. So Ubiquity was established to bring a revolutionary new learning system designed to change consciousness at a mass level. and to do it with hundreds of millions of dollars at our disposal, because nothing less than that is sufficient to accomplish the task at hand. So Ubiquity is designed as not a niche play. We're not an app. We're designed to change learning, change education as we know it. And the reason why this is important in Chartres as we approach our time together is because what we've been incubating in Chartres since 2005, when we first went there, and Andrew and Apila and various of us had the inspiration to found the Chartres Academy on the occasion of the 1000th anniversary of the founding of the Chartres Academy by Fulbert in 1006, is to prototype a mystical awareness that can be scaled globally. So the excitement that we're all feeling here in London, and the energy and the knowledge that I'll be taking to Asia in about 10 days' time, is that we've now brought together technology, learning systems, infrastructure, and the investment necessary to globalize transformational learning. So it's a very exciting moment for all of us. And I think that we should, on this spring equinox, we should take a moment in a dire world when all around us it seems to be spinning out of control, and it is, to understand and to celebrate that there's a contrary force of integration, of creativity, of redemption, that if we're skillful, we can actually trim tab off of the negativity of monsters like Trump and use that negativity in the spirit of Prigogine. You know, that there's a relationship between coherence and chaos. And in fact, the creation of the islands of coherence in the sea of chaos is the capacity of the coherence to use the chaos to create a higher level of coherence that lifts the chaos into a higher coherence. That's what Ubiquity is designed to do.
Love it.
And that is what we're now taking out into the world. So I'll stop there and turn it over to my good friend Andrew. But all of us should just celebrate the light at this time, because on the 21st of March, the light begins to exceed the darkness.
Yes.
And that's what Ubiquity is designed to do, to bring light in a way that draws from the darkness, transforms the darkness into such a piercing, shining clarity of truth and transparency and creativity and collaboration, that young minds all over the world are transformed, and true revolution that brings in the global new civilization is initiated.
Don't stop.
So that's all from me from London. He's designing all our social media programs. He's designing our marketing for our students. This guy is a total
blessed and inspired.
So that's all from me, Karen.
Okay, thank you, Jim. That was wonderful to get an update.
Wonderful.
Inspired, you know, and yes, to see the light shining through and piercing the darkness. Yeah, and the darkness overcometh it not.
We all want what you're on, so through the airwaves. It is so lovely to see you so happy after such a wild struggle, and to feel the truth of what you're saying becoming absolutely real. So I know that everybody on this call are just sending you so much love and hope and encouragement and strength, and just sheer bloody faith through everything, because this is about to be born. Isn't that amazing? Congratulations from all of us.
Oh, thank you. One quick little note, as if Claire's in the audience somewhere, I really want to thank Claire because she's
Oh,
been
God.
immensely patient with this man as he's careened around the planet, trying to resource all the necessary needs of an expanding institution and finally bringing home that woolly mammoth. Great day. So thank you, Claire.
Well, I think Claire is almost at the edge of enlightenment for such an experience. Congratulations, Jim. This is a very happy day. And I'd love to dedicate this tender oration on Bach to you and to Ubiquity, because for me, Bach is the music of the global heart-mind, the music of ubiquity, the music of this evolutionary consciousness that is now manifesting. And I want, when I'm in Chartres, to create an experience for us all in which that will become self-evident to everyone. And I am in the throes of crafting that sacred experience. It will be very sacred and very simple to allow the full mad sanity of what Bach's music really is to shine out. But first, I want to read us something from Ephraim the Syrian. And this is a very holy prayer, which is also a statement about the nature of divine human reality. And as you listen to it, I invite you to go into the utterly open, utterly transcendent, utterly immanent, utterly dignified, utterly whole state from which it is arising, quite naturally. I know the immovable comes down. I know the invisible appears to me. I know that the one who is far outside the whole creation takes me within himself and hides me in his arms, and then I find myself outside the whole world. I, a frail, small mortal in the world, behold the creator of the world, all of him within myself. And I know I shall not die, for I am within life. I have the whole of life springing up as a fountain within me. He is in my heart. He is in heaven. Both there and here he shows himself to me with equal glory. I want that particular embodied radiance to perfume all of our minds as I share with you an experience which truly transformed my understanding of music and absolutely revealed or begin to reveal who Bach really is for us now. It was the evening of 9/11, and I was sitting absolutely horrified watching the screen. Horrified not only at the appalling, senseless, brutal destruction, but horrified because I was seeing with my inmost eyes, my visionary eyes, that the collapse of the tower was the breaking of the dark waters of a monstrous and apocalyptic birth, the birth of the world we are now careening out of control in, the birth of the world that has arrived in its exploding senselessness and exploding violence, the world of Kali's Yuga exploding. And the double horror made me reel so deeply that I could hardly move, but an inspiration came to me, and that was to open a package from a friend. And in that package, there was the art of fugue. And the inspiration came to me to go and lie down in my study at that moment and listen with the full attention of my whole being, concentrated absolutely on the art of fugue. So reeling with that horror of recognition that we were now going into a period of immense shattering, unimaginable suffering, terrible chaos, out of which we might not emerge. Out of that horror, I was peeled and flayed and open and mindless enough to really surrender to that inspiration and lie down on the floor in the dark of my study and then listen in a way I had never listened before to music I had never even begun to hear before, because only then could I truly begin to hear what is actually happening in Bach, in this immense stable explosion of divine wisdom and love and power and compassion in sound. And as I lay there, I had my whole being, heart, mind, soul, and body reconstructed through the celestial but very grounded chiropractic of Bach's fugal eruption. And I realized beyond concept that what is happening in Bach's music is nothing less than reality itself is manifesting itself in the highest, purest, clearest, most pristine, most noble, most encouraging, most transcendent, and most eminent order, so as to align the listener who is prepared for such a sacred initiation with the evolutionary consciousness of the new divine humanity. And in that experience, which I've been unpacking and returning to and re-experiencing with and in Bach ever since, what has become clear to me is that one of the most amazing mystical realities of our time is this experiencing of Bach at this level of mystical transmission. What happened after that experience is that I plunged into a study of all of Bach's works, and I plunged also into a study of how Western culture had been shaped from within by this revelation of mystical truth and power that is Bach's music. And I discovered that there have been two great revolutions in our understanding of Bach, both of which are now coming together in a mystery that transcends them to give us a new way into a completely new vision of what Bach's music is for us at this time. I think the story has the outlines of this archetypal transmission, the apocalyptic time, and a music that enshrines the mathematical ecstasy of creation and fundamental laws of creation manifesting from groundless light. I think I have sketched the outlines of what is revealed as Bach is revealed. But these two great revolutions of perception are worth spending a little time on now so that you can savor this growth of Bach within our heart core, a growth that mirrors the growth of Rumi in the civilized heart history of the planet, because the Rumi we are experiencing now is a vastly expanded Rumi for the enormity of the crisis that that expanded Rumi is designed by the divine intelligence for. And the same is true of Bach, as we discover. Bach's music got lost after he died, and he was almost forgotten 2 decades after his death, although scraps of his knowledge lived on in the music of his sons. But there was a massive, ecstatic rediscovery of Bach, which actually was a kind of new hearing of what had been seeded in Bach, by Bach, in the Romantic era, especially by Mendelssohn. And this discovery enabled Bach's rigor to undergird Romantic music in a way that made Romantic music even more sublime in Schubert and in Schumann, and in, of course, late Beethoven, who became drunk on the mathematical ecstasy of Bach. But it was philosophically sanctified, this revelation of Bach as the fundamental revelation of music as creative, divine sound. It was this revelation that was sanctified philosophically by Goethe. And this is a very little known but very important moment in European cultural history, in the history of the evolution of the divine human. Goethe had resisted Bach's music for a long time, had not liked its elaboration, had not wanted its severity, had found it cold. And in his 70s, he was sent by a music critic who knew of this distaste of Goethe, the sheet music of Bach's Wohltemperter Klavier, the well-tempered clavier. Goethe went into his study in his 70s after a lifetime of alchemical creativity, trying to forge not only heroically different works in different genres, but more importantly, even a new kind of being in himself through his engagement with all of the disciplines of his time. He was on a consciously alchemical search for the new human in himself. He went into his study and he looked over the sheet music of the well-tempered clavier, and he experienced the radiance of the transmission of that holy, illumined oneness mind that is Bach. And he came out and he said probably the most extraordinary thing that one great creative mystical genius has ever said about another. He said of Bach's music that it was eternal reality, singing to itself in its own bosom. There are many different accounts of what Goethe said, but that is probably the clearest announcement. And that was not only the ultimate kind of praise of what is happening in Bach's constant bubbling up from the ground of reality in constant, sober, endlessly refreshed joy, the fundamental joy of the cosmos. He wasn't only representing and celebrating that in Bach, he was also recognizing that in Bach, in this sound, an integration of opposites, a marriage of opposites, a sacred marriage of transcendence and immanence, groundedness and utter rupture had taken place, a marriage of opposites that was at the core of his own alchemical search. He was sounding and hearing the sound of the evolutionary search that had consumed his own life. This sanctification by Goethe of Bach made the whole Victorian adoration of Bach as a holy oracle of divine truth possible. But the great later apostle of this particular kind of revelation of what Bach is was a man called Albert Schweitzer, who as you know, worked with lepers in Africa, gave his life to the Christ consciousness, wrote an extraordinary book on Bach and played Bach with extreme passion. And his recordings of the Bach toccatas are amongst the greatest and holiest recordings of Bach ever recorded. There are manifestations of ecstatic adoration of this great holy power that's unleashed in Bach's music. And he said one thing, and I'm only going to select this one phrase from what Schweitzer wrote about Bach, because it's the key. He said, in Bach, immense strength functions without self-consciousness. In Bach, immense strength functions without self-consciousness. When I was lying in that study, listening, played and emptied out to Bach recreate the cosmos, recreate the wonder of every single event manifesting from the groundless ground of the light. When I was hearing that's what's happening in Bach's music. Then what Goethe said rang completely and wholly true to me. And when I came across Schweitzer's remark that this was an immense strength that functioned without self-consciousness, I understood why Bach is so sacred to the whole of our culture, because he represents the highest kind of genius, a genius surrendered to the divine, to be used by the divine with all of its unbelievable panoply of precise and brilliant gifts, gifts of counterpoint, gifts of amazing instrumental ability, gifts of profound visionary understanding of the links between the sacred laws of the universe and the laws of proportion in music, gifts beyond the imagining of gifts, gifts of supreme spiritual genius and supreme musical genius aligned at an incandescent level. And then I realized that there had been a second revolution in our perception and understanding and hearing of Bach, which is as monumental and as important as this first revelation, because it takes Bach beyond even Western culture. And this revolution in our hearing is the revolution that happens in the hearing of those of us who have been through the austerity, the rigor, the tremendous ferocity of the Eastern disciplines, of the disciplines of Buddhism and Hinduism and Islamic mysticism. Because if you allow yourself to go through their rigors of absolute stripping away of all forms of illusion to enter the eternal light and then experience deathless consciousness from that within the manifestations of that light in reality, if you take that road, you'll hear Bach not only in the way Goethe and Schweitzer heard Bach, you'll hear Bach in an even more glorious way, because you hear in Bach what Lorca began to hear in the middle of the Civil War when he called Bach the supreme example of duende, of the ferocity of the pure laws of pristine manifestation, the absolute unyielding clarity of the truth that is at the core of evolutionary love, that ferocity that is so rigorous and so austere, but also so purifying and so ennobling. And the way in which this Bach, who of course is still the great Bach of the cathedrals, the Bach of the great mystical treatises that composed most of his library, the Bach of the man who lived in domestic bliss with 17 children running up and down the stairs, that Bach, but is also a further unfolding revelation of the universal, mystical, evolutionary voice and song that is Bach's most complete revelation. And I just would like to end by just reading to you what I wrote on that night on 9/11. It's just a fragment, but it will help you, I hope, come into this expanding Bach field and help you really start to prepare yourself to listen to the tremendous transmission from the heart of the evolutionary Godhead that's being given in this perfect music, in this music that is a perfect marriage of absolute opposites, a perfect marriage of transcendent ecstasy and immanent groundedness, a perfect marriage of archetypal sorrow and nobility and dignity and struggle with absolute stability and peace. And so here is these fragments which came out of that lava-like, explosive, sacred celebration of the soul that happened through the grace of Bach to me on that night, and can happen to us all at this moment of the expansion of the global mind. Never let us forget that it is in our divine musicians that we have the most powerful transmission of this new consciousness. They transmit with an eloquence and a passion and a power and an infinite divine magic that no great orator or no great mystical poet can ever get close, because music is direct grace in sound when it is channeled, as it is channeled by Bach in this absolutely consciously transfiguring way. So this was what I discovered that night. Sound aligned with the divinest games of mathematics. The divinest games expressed sublimely in the fugue form, the ultimate musical form of reality, because like all reality, composed in impossibly complex configurations from impossibly simple beginnings. The music of the marriage of opposites. The music of the Jalal names of God, the protective, tender names, and the Jamal names, the terrible names, the Jalal and the Jamal. The music of severity and rapture fused in sobriety that is a drunkenness beyond imagination. The music of law and infinite fertility. The music of the Godhead bubbling. So I invite you this week to prepare yourself in an empty room and turn on the artifuge and let yourself imagine that I'm not mad, I'm crazy, that Goethe is not mad and crazy, that Schweitzer is not mad and crazy. And those of us who are discovering this new Bach, and there are many of us, are not crazy, because what we are discovering in this Bach is a direct route to embodied divine consciousness through the transmission of perfectly regulated, harmonious, balanced, infinitely peaceful, infinitely dynamic and rigorous and rapturous sound. Bach sound, the Bach field. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That was a beautiful description of your experience as the grandeur of Bach's music. We really appreciate your transparency and sharing, the trials that you went through before you received this gift in the mail, and then
Yes.
your experience and insights into what the profound nature of this music is. I have a friend, Dennis Klochek, who had an experience where he started to have this inner voice saying to him, the art of the fugue, the art of the fugue.
That's it, yes.
The art of the fugue. And he didn't know anything about it, really. He had never listened to it. And so he went and got it. And he sat down and listened to the whole of it straight through. And it had such an impact on him that he made an experiment of listening to it in its entirety every day for 6 months. And what happened, he's an esoteric physiologist or something. I don't know. He's a brilliant mystic, and he's a scientist. And what he was able to do was to determine how energy flowed through different parts of his body through the various of the 14 fugues.
Wow.
And he linked them to Pythagorean number systems, so how the 1 and the 2 and the 3, and how that affected his physiology.
So it's a science of transfiguration, isn't it?
That's right.
Right.
And when this 6-month period was over, and he had this profound understanding of what the music was doing to his physiology, and sort of realigning,
yes,
the whole fiber of his being.
I experience this every day. I do this every day with Bach, yes.
And so what he describes is that what this art of the fugue does is it prepares you to die.
Mm.
That's what he ended up saying. It's a preparation so that you're so aligned in a certain way with cosmic law through the frequencies of the music that there's no fear of that transition. And he couldn't, in the end, describe it any other way than it prepares you to cross the threshold.
But you could also say it prepares you to die into the present and die into this moment, die into love itself.
Yes.
Because it aligns you so completely with the laws of love that it makes you present in heart, mind, soul, and body. It is embodiment music.
Yes.
For the now.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be dying and crossing the threshold. Cross the threshold of your own self-absorption. Enter into total relatedness sublimely with reality through Bach. Then you are having the experience of the Father-Mother. This is the music of the sacred marriage.
Yes, he actually said that. And he does that. He's totally present every day.
Amazing. God. Absolutely. And the art of fugue is for all of those who begin to get it. It is the equivalent in sound of the Vedas or of all of the Islamic mystics combined. It is a revelation of reality at that level of pristine splendor. And if you attune yourself through reverence and through meditation to become spacious enough to allow it to happen to you again and again, every time you listen, a different alignment will take place chiropractically of your whole being with the great force field of wisdom and love it itself is emanating, and it itself is recreating through sound splendor. That is so immense. And that is what the art of fugue, as far as you could put it into words, in my words anyway, is. And that's just a beginning of what it is. And because all words fade when the music starts. And that is where Bach is supreme, the Everest of genius. And that's also where this particular kind of revelation can help us so much, because the art of fugue is a revelation of rigor and of attention and of sober, grand, fertile, dynamic peace. That's its huge blessing. I don't want to go on, and I can, so I'd better shut up, because this is just, it's the great rapture of my life, Bach. I'm only just beginning to comprehend it. Completely amazes me what's happening in this music.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for sharing all that you have. And Ruth, I just want to address you as a musician and see if you have anything that you want to share about the art of the fugue.
Well, I actually haven't listened to that so much. The pieces that I've inside of are the St. Matthew and the St. John Passion.
Yes.
Those are the two. I've played them on flute many, many times, and I've had some, and I listened to them from when I was a child. I listened to them all the time, and then I got to play them on flute later on. And I don't know, every time I'm inside of that piece, something happens. It's just very, and I've had one really very strong spiritual experience almost of being at the crucifixion while playing, and it was a little disturbing, but it's that powerful, that music. And so I know the chords and how they change and the different things, the ways that he uses the strings, and of course I know the flute part really well. But it's always, every time I do it, I haven't done it in a long time, but both those pieces have very deeply affected me. And I will, now that you've been talking about this, I will spend some time with the art of the fugue. But I definitely understand about being inside of these pieces and how powerful it is. And I had an experience, a friend of mine was playing the Bach partitas on the violin, and I knew her, we went to school together. So I saw her when she was in her late teens, early 20s, struggling with this. And then 30 years later, I heard her play it again. And it was amazing, because I heard the years in how I'd heard her life in the way with this piece that she had been living with the 30 years. And that's really another one of the amazing things about living inside a piece, is that it transforms your life and how you play it.
Thank you, Ruth. Yeah, thank you. So it would be nice if we opened up to questions and comments from anybody. Anybody who's on the call, faculty, participants. We'd love to hear any comments or questions. And Rick, if you could somehow facilitate this if people raise their hands. Do you see how they do that?
Yeah, there's at the bottom, there's a Q&A at the bottom, and you go in there and type in your question. I can't see a lot of the viewers for some reason, so they could be logging in different ways. So it'd have to be using the Q&A, or I can see a question in the chat.
Okay, and then would those people be able to speak? Could we hear them?
If I can see them, I can't see very many people, though, is the only problem.
Okay, you can only see people who have come in by computer.
Yeah, I'm only seeing, yeah, okay.
Somebody's got a question.
Oh, here's a question. Can we hear a little of the music?
I wish we could. I'm tantalizing you. You can listen to it this week with this inspiration, I hope, and listen to it in a new way. I wish I'd brought some. I haven't. I apologize.
Do you have a favorite recording of the art of the fugue?
I do. I love the recording by Tatiana Nikolaeva.
Okay.
And she's a wild Russian, and she plays it with tremendous majesty. And you really feel reality building in her great, fierce Russian fingers.
So one thing that those listening should know, that there are various transcriptions of the art of the fugue.
Yes.
It's performed on organ, it's performed on piano, it's performed by strings, and different people resonate more keenly with one or another of the
transcriptions are wonderful, aren't they?
And the instruments. So
Yeah.
you might know if you, like Andrew mentioned the piano version, and my friend Dennis, he was taken up by the string version.
Yes, the Emerson String Quartet have recorded the string version in the most amazing way.
So you could try different versions of it. Yeah, I really like the Emerson String Quartet as well.
You love that? I love that. That's
yeah, but I also am inclined toward the piano. So
me too.
Yeah, good. So, and also you can actually go on the internet and Google the art of the fugue, and there are recordings of it that you can listen to through YouTube. So you don't have to go out and purchase it if you would like to get a taste of it and see if you want to get a recording. So that's a possibility. So is there another question, Rick?
Nope, that's the only question I have at this point.
It'd be great if anybody would love to offer how they hear Bach. If I've been able to evoke anything in your heart, because this is such a passion of mine. I'd love to hear how it's evoked passions in you about Bach.
I think Peggy has something that she would
no, what I wanted to say was thank you, Andrew. It's always such a joy to trail along behind your great fire. You are the comet sweeping the heavens with such wonder and such excitement and such beauty. And it's lovely just to see it and wave, or whatever I can do to follow it. But it's just lovely. Thank you for that. It was grand to hear and to experience.
Thank you.
Karen, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's me, Apila. I was struck by the comments because I live on a sacred site. My husband's been a caretaker of it all of his life, and his family many, many generations before. And this site is a pond that in Hawaiian traditional prayers can make manifest a 34-foot black lizard, which is the protector of the waters, and the lizard in the pond is like the fetus in the womb. But it's real. They actually could manifest it in the old days, and there are still practitioners who probably could. The thing is, the teaching of the lizard, of the mo'o, is the lesson of embracing dualities and allowing both to stand and coming into a deeper order because of that. And this is actually the real meaning of the place, is that it's the sacred site of conception. And it can be the conception of an idea, of music, of a baby. So I have been struggling with, I'm writing a book about the last practitioner, a woman whose history has been forgotten here, although she only died in 1956. And listening to the comments that you've made, Andrew, in regards to Bach, and what Jim had said earlier, now I am prepared. I needed to write this part today, and now I am ready to do it, about conception and about transformation. And the way that the underlying coherence works with absolute nightmarish chaos. So it's a good lesson today for me. Thank you, all of you.
One of the things that Mahler said about Bach, he said, in Bach, the vital cells of music are united as the world is in God.
Oh.
How beautiful.
There's another quote that I think you will like, Andrew, and probably everybody will. This is by Douglas Adams. He said, "I don't think a greater genius has walked the earth. Of the three great composers, Mozart tells us what it's like to be human. Beethoven tells us what it's like to be Beethoven. And Bach tells us what it's like to be the universe."
Oh,
Yeah. So
I think that's really so, and that is what the immense strength that functions without self-consciousness can become the vessel of, that universal awareness, that universal joy. It's so important that the essential form in Bach is the dance. Even the fugues at their most ecstatic return to the dance form. And that is such an explosion of the central truth of the creative force of the divine.
Jane, it's nice to see that you've joined us. And
Yes.
I wonder, do you, have you ever done anything with music in terms of number? Have you ever explored that?
Not with classical music, but I have friends who are translating chords and numbers to specific musical patterns. Like you can take a sequence of numbers like the Fibonacci sequence and
Yes.
translate it to different musical notes. So there's a lot of, I'm more interested in the experimentation of translating number into sound. But I'm learning an instrument myself called the oud.
Yes.
It's the, I have a Turkish oud, and so I'm learning the Arabic scale as a way to understand number. So that's what I'm currently exploring. So I do love music, but I apologize, I don't have the vast amount of knowledge that I should have, because they're so related. But I'm definitely exploring that path. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Good.
Can I ask you a question? What do you feel the relation is at this moment in your journey into music? How do they resonate for you, this mathematical revelation and music itself?
For example, in my research with mathematics, I could say that the number 9, whenever I realize that number 9 underpins a great vast amount of knowledge that I know. So when I started looking at certain notes, the way Pythagoras subdivided the fundamental from the 1 to the 2 or the 2 to the 3, I found that 1/9 of a note corresponded, I think, to D note. There was a certain, when I was tuning the guitar, there's certain tunings called like D-A-D, D-A-D, like dad, dad. And I found that if ever I wanted an Arabic sound on a normal classical guitar, I'd have to tune to this D sound to get that.
Yes.
Just plucking that one note, my whole soul would breathe. And then when I started realizing the numerical relationships, that 1/9 of the fundamental was that Arabic sound, it made me realize that, oh, that's why I like the D sound. Why did I like D? So that's what I mean. I'm still exploring. I haven't had.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So that continues. That continues. Yeah.
So Jane, do
Ruth,
you?
what would be your comment on all this?
Oh, I was speaking earlier about living inside some of these pieces for a while and how transformative it is. And yeah, and a lot of the Renaissance people also, as far as numbers, the Renaissance people were crazy. They did all kinds of things with numbers and created the most sublime music.
Oh, God, yes. Polyphony is
Yeah, it's amazing. It's,
a rotating crystal of revelation, isn't
they
it?
run it forward, they run it backwards, they
Absolutely.
put it in triple, they turn it upside down. It's really, and the music is amazing. So, but Bach, there's all sorts of number of things in Bach as well. So, but I was saying earlier that I just really living with a piece, any of the pieces for a really long time, it really does do something to you. It's amazing.
Well, I know it's also true with poetry. You know, you live with anything. I mean, I was thinking, Karen, when you were talking about your friend listening to the Bach for every day for 6 months, my goodness, you know, you do breathing exercises for 6 months. You look at a mandala for 6 months. You read the four quartets for 6 months. You know, I mean, Andrew, I imagine 6 month focus on almost anything would bring you into a quasi state of enlightenment. just if due for no other reason than the discipline of focusing attention every day on the same thing. You know, and that's of course the depth of the meditative practice is just to sit there and just contemplate your breath. You know,
it's so wonderful when the object is like Bach, something that can expand infinitely as you begin to expand. That's what's so amazing in this music. It's that it is a field of very great divine wisdom. It's not just sound, even illumined sound. It's doing something magical to you as you surrender to it, and it's revealing more of its mystery through that magic also.
Yeah, well, remember that's Plato's notion of the Platonic solids and the ancient pre-Christian sort of pagan notion of what we would call idols is, and that's the purpose of Chartres Cathedral, that when you come into the presence fugue of Bach, you come into the presence of the you know, the north window to the cosmic mother in Chartres Cathedral. You walk the labyrinth. What you're actually doing is you're entering in to a more refined frequency than that which you are. And it's the contemplation of that refined frequency that elevates your soul.
Exactly.
And that's why it was so unfortunate when the Christians burnt down all the idols. You know, the ancient pagans didn't have depictions of Aphrodite to worship her. It was rather to put beauty in form, contemplate that refinement of beauty, and allow that contemplation literally to lift your frequencies to a higher octave. Exactly. That was the whole purpose of the adoration. And the purpose of the mandala, the purpose of even mantras, is that we humans have a capacity to realign ourselves up the scale by focusing attention on higher frequencies. And of course, Jane, that's what you'll be teaching, you know, for 5 days in Chartres, you know, as we contemplate the one as opposed to the two or the three or the 9 or the 7. We're contemplating different frequencies that, you know, it's like cleansing our chakra system, these different contemplations. And that's the spiritual pathway. That's what a seeker does.
Right.
Isn't that right, Andrew? Or
I do, yeah, absolutely. And one of the greatest medicines for this kind of cleansing is this music, because it has sublime purity and rigor and joy and primordial sanity in it. It is divine. It's a string of divine truth.
Yeah.
Yes. Primordial sanity.
Beautiful.
Good. Hi, Kayla.
You're muted, Kaylin.
Are we in the green room?
No.
Oh, we're not. Okay. I was just piggybacking on what you were talking about on the frequencies.
Yes.
There's something there's a new scientific thing called stimulated Brillouin scattering, which talks about how a visual component can piggyback sound and vibration. And just from my studies with the people that built in the tradition of the people that built the Chartres Cathedral, the stained glass, when the light comes through it, can piggyback the music generated in the cathedral, whether it's voices or music, and it can enhance the listening experience because a visual component is also penetrating the listener.
Love that.
And it really makes of Chartres a machine of the sacred marriage ecstasy, doesn't it? You are infused by the portions of the place. The music opens you to every conceivable sublime law, and the radiance of the rose window is the creation lit up by the fire of God, the fire of divine love. That's why Chartres is such a hugely transfiguring place, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Karen, I'm going to have to say goodbye here in a moment because I have a few other things I need to tend to. But thank you so much, Andrew, for your exposition. I hope we hear more about Bach when we get to Chartres.
Oh, we will.
That would be fantastic. It would be great to have some music, maybe you could play something, Ruth, or I don't know, Karen, what you've got planned, but it would be nice to talk about numbers with music.
Yeah, well, I would love to do that. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think it would be essential to have that at the core of this, because Bach is this in sound. So what a wonderful conjoining of forces of truth.
Yes. Okay, see you all in Chartres. I know you got a few more minutes here, Karen. I need to jump, but thank you all so much, and we'll talk next month.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us, Jim, and give our greetings to all the people there.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jim. And Karen, I've got to go as well. I'm so sorry. It's been a wonderful time to be with you, and it's grand to listen to all of you. It's good to see you again, too.
Thank you.
Much love to you.
I'm listening. Thank you.
All right. And we look forward to your presentation next month.
I look forward to it, too.
Yeah, good.
Well. Mr. Harvey sets the bar so high.
Yes. All right.
All of you do. So we'll see how it plays, but it'll be good to see you. Thank you very much. You all take care.
Thank you, Peggy.
May the spring come to New York, Ruth.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, Kaylin looked a little cold, all wrapped up too.
Take care.
All right, thank you, Peggy.
Bye-bye.
So, Ruth, I'm wondering if you could you play anything on your flute that just gives us a flavor of Bach?
I would have to go find the music, but I'm now inspired to relearn some of the Bach partitas for flute, but I haven't done them in a while, and I couldn't lay hands on it fast enough.
Okay, all right. Well, consider yourself invited to do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, it's definitely inspiring me to listen. I mean, I know that I have several pieces and cantatas that I am inside of, but I'm really interested now in getting a recording of the Art of the Fugue and spending some time there.
Yes.
But there is a flute partita which I will look up as soon as we're done here.
Thank you. So we don't have any more questions or comments from any of the listeners. So if there isn't anything more that anyone would like to share, we could turn to our closing prayer, if everyone feels ready to do that.
Just before then, Karen, I would ask you, let me return home, and could you ring me at my home number? I love you all, and I thank you all. God bless you.
All right. Would you be kind enough to bring our time together to a close with a benediction prayer?
In the fire and the warmth of the divine ecstasy, witnessing the marriage of the opposites, we are one. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for the level of the gift of the fire of the circle and virtual reality spanning the globe. Thank you for the gift writ large in our breath, in the warmth of the sun, in the movement of the waves, in the green of the grasses and mountains, in the movement of the winds, the passion. We give thanks for this unfolding day after day after day. Thank you for being a part of this great mystery. Ah, Mama. Oh, no.
Thank you, Akila. And may your day be blessed from start to finish.
Off to Zumba now.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone, for being on the call today. And we very much look forward to being together again next month on April 20th. I believe it will be the same time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And Peggy will be our featured speaker, and I'm hoping, and I think will be possible for Bonafshe to be on with us on May 18th. So we're looking forward to that. So blessings to everyone, best wishes, and may the light shine ever greater as we're approaching the equinox. Yes. So thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good to
Bye,
see you.
everyone.